Welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a shader with two different specular reflections. Okay, so here we are back in our course materials.blend file, and I just want to draw your attention to the fact that I have some extra items in here. That's because this is a video I've added in after doing a little bit more work on the course, but it makes sense to be in the course at this point. So we are going to create a material that could be used for any surface that's painted and then has some kind of clear coat applied to it. This clear coat could be something that's applied to a guitar. It could be varnish applied to a wooden surface. It could be the polish on top of a car paint material. There are many different utilities to this type of surface. So with our object selected, I'm going to click on New to add a new material to this object. Let's just call it Clearcoat. And the way Clearcoat works is we already have access to our roughness map, and let's just create a darker color in here so this shows up a little bit easier. So we have access to our roughness already, and we already know that if we have this value low, we get stronger reflections on our surface. If we take it all the way down, we essentially get a mirror finish. And if we increase that, we get more diffuse reflections. Let's take that roughness all the way down. And now let's take this clear coat setting and turn it all the way up. So this is essentially adding a second surface on top of our object, on top of our original information. The only thing is we only have access to roughness and also clear coat normal maps. For this surface, we can't change things like the specular tint, whether it's metallic, its transmission, anything like that. It's essentially completely see-through. But since we do have access to a second roughness setting, we can now tweak this diffuse reflection a little bit more. So we can do several combinations. We could have two levels of roughness where both levels are a little bit rough and we don't get perfectly mirror finish. We could have a slightly rough underlying effect and then a completely mirror finish on top, and in which case we get this nice effect here. Or we could have it the opposite way about, where we have no roughness there and a little bit of roughness on the surface. But essentially what you'll get is you'll get your solid mirror finish reflection with your diffuse reflection layered on top or below it. And because these reflections are essentially transparent on the surface, or the way they're calculated is essentially transparent, you get this effect where we have a solid and nice reflection and then some more diffuse around it. And that gives the impression we have two surfaces. Now, as I said, we have access to a normal map that works just on the clear coat. Now, it occurs to me that we've not actually looked at the normal map itself either. So let's just quickly do that. Let's turn the clear coat all the way down. And I'm just going to grab a texture, and we're just going to grab this noise texture. And let's convert this to a normal map using vector bump. This takes this grayscale factor value, which is essentially going to be used as a height map, and plugs it into height. So let's look at that noise texture. Use Control Shift left click to look at that noise texture. We have some areas that are dark and some areas that are slightly lighter. When we plug it into our normal map, it takes that information, gives us these blues and reds and purples, and it's going to use that to distort the surface of our object. Not the geometry, but just the way the normals work. So when we plug this into our object, we get the effect that we've displaced the surface, but if you look around the edges, we still have a completely smooth effect. Normal maps are used on game objects to create the illusion that there's much more geometry than there actually is. Now this is a little bit strong, so let's take that strength down quite a bit. And you can see with quite a low strength, we get a slightly warped surface, which gives us these irregular reflections. And if we increase our roughness map, you can see how these start bowing out, and we get this rough area. So let's say this is the underlying surface of our object. If we then add the clear coat on top of that, what we're doing is we're now taking that underlying surface, which is already slightly warped. Now you can see that our clear coat follows the surface normals of the regular map. So also our surface highlights from the Clearcoat follow that first normal map. But if we change that into the Clearcoat normal, what we find is only the Clearcoat is affected by the normal map, and changing the roughness down shows us that our original object still has very sharp, undistorted reflections, whereas the Clearcoat has those warped reflections now. So now we've only affected the top clear coat of our surface, and we could add a little bit of diffuse reflection in there as well. And you start to get this interesting effect where we have two levels of diffuse, where our paint underneath is completely flat and smooth, but our clear coat on top is all warped and warbled. Now we can use this effect to have a roughness map, to have scratches, to have dents, anything like that in the surface of an object that doesn't actually affect the underlying surface. The only thing to keep in mind, this is only really useful if you want to have two surfaces where one of those surfaces is completely transparent, like the clear coat. Now let's take this up a little bit here. And at the moment, this is quite a nice effect. It's not very useful on its own as a shader, so we're not going to add it to the asset library. But later on in the course, we're going to create a procedural car paint material that will be useful, and we will be marking that as an asset. Okay, so it's challenge time. Your challenge in this video is to create your own clear coat shader. Now you can use any colours you want and any roughnesses you want, just be creative with it. Experiment with different settings for both roughness and clear coat roughness to see how both of those settings combined affect the reflections on your surface. And as a more advanced challenge, why don't you try adding a simple texture node with a bump node and plug it into the normal or the clear coat normal inputs just to see how that affects your shader. In the next video, we'll be moving on to a glass material, so I'll join you in the next video.